is it worth getting the Insta360 Go 3? The short answer is yes. In my opinion, it is absolutely worth having this in your arsenal. But the real value for me is essentially having a B cam to my A cam in a run and gun setting. Essentially two major downsides, which is not a deal breaker, but just a consideration to keep in mind. The battery life on this thing is actually rather disappointing. It is marketed as having a battery life of about 45 minutes. In my case, it's never lasted that long. It's lasted maybe anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes is more appropriate. And if I do, well, because of that reason, you need to ensure that you're taking the AirPod case. I'm calling it an AirPod case, but whatever this, the pod, make sure you have the pod with you, because the pod would allow you to recharge. And whenever it's recharging, you'll see that the light turns on. So you need to ensure that you have the pod with you. Last night, I forgot to take the pod with me, and 30 minutes into recording some jiu-jitsu rolls, the thing ran out of battery. And so I ended up having a few rounds where I was recording that did not have any gyro data stabilization. So for that reason, I'm actually considering getting the Insta360 Go 3S, not the whole thing, just the standalone camera. I already have a pod, it's backwards compatible. The Insta360 Go 3S will fit in this one and will also charge it. So in the event that I do ever run out of space or run out of battery on one, I've got a second one ready to go. I can just take on or take off one, put it back into charge, and put the other one in just like that, just like a set of batteries. And so that's the major benefit and value of this guy right here. And I think it's a must-have for anyone who wants to have a B cam and gyro stabilized footage for cameras that don't have it. So this is not a camera that is the first or only camera in your arsenal. It might be weird coming from me, considering just right here, I've got these guys. I've also got this one, and I've also got this one here, which is the 360 camera. And now I kind of want to talk about it in terms of how I use these cameras and what is, I guess, the appropriate combination thereof. So let me first start off with this one here. This here is the Insta360 1R. I did not buy this camera. My wife gave it to me as a gift on a birthday of mine several years ago. This is around the time when this had originally come out. And she got me the dual combo, which was the 360 module and the 4K module. And my issue with the original setup of the Insta360 1R is that the 4K module, its performance wasn't up to the quality that I was getting from my GoPro Hero 6, which was used as my action camera. It was used as my sometimes on-the-go vlogging camera and for gyro data stabilization. And so what I was using the Insta360 1R for was for the 360, but I scratched up the lens pretty bad. And so, after using it, it's going to hit up. That's one of the downsides. It didn't come with lens guards. I didn't have lens guards. And by the time it got scratched up and I got lens guards, it was already too late. So I went ahead and bought this guy right here, which is the Insta360 1-inch or Insta360 1RS 1-inch edition. This is of great value for anybody who wants to have 360 footage, right? Behind the scenes type of stuff. This is where this kind of comes in really handy. If I'm recording something or I'm out with family, just kind of stick this up on my back or mount it on my camera to kind of get that 360 footage. Or for jiu-jitsu, if I want to record some of my rolls and I want to be able to frame that up later, this is very useful in that regard. And so since I replaced the 360 on the 1R, then I got myself the Leica 1-inch module, which is what this is here. Just to kind of preface, if you don't have one of these, I don't know if this would be worth it, except for the portability factor that this has and the fact that this is so much easier and more fun to use, whereas this is a little bit more advanced and more technical. And I'll explain that in a little bit. This is better low light. This is 5.3K. This is a full 1-inch sensor, but in order to be able to take full advantage of this, you're gonna have to get some accessories. One, you're gonna need the boosted battery. Unfortunately, it's not easy to find nowadays. I got the boosted battery back when it was popular, but good luck finding that. You're gonna be stuck with a bunch of short batteries because the short battery is doesn't have a very good battery life. So that's the key thing to understand. The other thing is the close focusing on this, oddly enough, is not very good. So what I ended up having to purchase was on eBay, I got myself a 3D printed, somebody was 3D printing a adapter that allows you to attach 43 millimeter filter rings or 49 millimeter filter rings. And so I added a +1 diopter on the Insta360 1R. So this way I can get close focusing when I need it. And if I'm, that's, for like the selfie kind of stuff. And when I'm recording stuff, I'll just take off the filter and I can just use it naked as such, or I could just put the filter, the original filter that it has on there to protect that lens. So, and normally what I would use this for is I will use this as a B or C cam on any one of my multi-camera rigs that I do for events and things like that. It comes in real handy, and image quality coming out of this, given that you're in an appropriately lit situation, is actually pretty good. Even in lower light, but not necessarily dark low light, this is actually really good and pairs really well with any APS-C or Micro Four Thirds camera. Now that brings me to the Insta360 Go 3 and possibly even the Go 3S. I got this as a gift from my wife. Part of what I like about this is not having to worry about the camera in terms of it getting wet, in terms of it getting busted up. I think what sold me on the idea of this camera was the video by Josh Yeo from Make Art Now, where he essentially strapped this thing to modified rockets that he just multiple times just keeps sending it up. And I think that was a brilliant advertisement in terms of showcasing his durability and his reliability. And so I was like, yo, this is great. I would love to have that camera just by the virtue of being able to put it places where I would not want to scratch up my other cameras. And so for that reason, it's always interesting to see what are some creative ways to be able to use this camera. Now, I haven't used it in very many creative ways, except for maybe sticking it on an RC that I got for my kid recently and having some fun with that. Now, the latency with relation to monitoring whatever video is coming on here, if it's like in the other room, you're gonna lose that signal here. So monitoring the RC like it's a like one of those drone videos where people are doing FPV stuff is not practical. So you basically have to maintain visual line of sight of where the RC is in order to be able to see where it's at. But that I crashed that RC at least a dozen times. Even the Insta360 Go 3 fell off of the magnetic mount that I had taped onto the RC several times, and it's still fine. Like, I don't even see these scratches on this thing. They must be using some sort of space-age technology in terms of the build quality. I would give it a 10 out of 10. And I think that's one of the key things about this guy right here is the fact that it is durable. Now, 90% of my usage for this guy is to do videos that I can not only use as a B cam, but I can also stabilize the footage in gyro flow. And so if you take a look at this here is my Canon EOS M6 Mark II. And whenever I'm recording footage, you'll notice how the lenses are horizontally aligned, and especially for anything that's maybe 3+ feet more, it's almost like right there. And so it gives me the ability to cut back and forth between an ultra wide angle and whatever focal length you're using ideally. So the field of view on this is about 9 millimeters, maybe 11 millimeters, but I think it's closer to 9 millimeters if you use gyro flow. For whatever reason on Insta360, the app, it only gives you the option of shooting either vertical or extracting vertical or horizontal. You can't do a full square of the sensor that is on this camera. If you want to be able to get the full square, and it's about 2.8K actually, not 2.5K, although they market it as 2.5K. If you want to get the full extreme edges, you want to get the full 2.8K of the Insta360 Go, I suggest using GyroFlow. You can put in the appropriate resolution, you get the full square, and you can export the square out so that you get your full video, and then you can cut back and forth. Whether it's a vertical timeline or a horizontal timeline, you won't have to keep reshaping or resizing or scaling the video. It is what it is. You just set the appropriate aspect ratio for the final render and you're good to go, and I appreciate that a lot. It has actually enabled me to produce more shorts and short form content for YouTube, not just for myself, but for some client work as well. Going back to the way that I've been using it, I've been using it to stabilize my M6 Mark II, my EOS M, the original with Magic Lantern, and the 5D Mark III with Magic Lantern in both of them. And it's as simple as this, right? And the thing about on the EOS M6 Mark II, I would say like vast majority of the time, I just throw this in my bag and I'm good to go. This is one of the things I like about this camera. I have yet to find a camera that kind of meets the versatility of this size and weight, and with a lens combination that is as small. I considered the A7C with the 35mm pancake. It's bigger than this. I also considered, and I would still consider the ZV-E1. And if anything, if I were to upgrade, I would probably upgrade to the ZV-E1 with the Samyang or Carl Zeiss 35mm 2.8 to basically give me something similar to this. The good thing about the Sony is that it's already got gyro data built into it, so I wouldn't necessarily have to have that, but I would still have it just to have a B cam, and I can stabilize either independently of the other. I don't have to pair the footage or the gyro data from one into this. So that would essentially save me one step. Plus, the ZV-E1 has fantastic image quality compared to EOS M, although the EOS M standalone, just by itself, actually looks really good, in my opinion. And you get basically 4K, but that 4K is essentially an upsample 3.2K, whereas the Insta360 Go 3 here, this guy is 2.8K. So in terms of original resolution between the two of them, it's very, very close. So they pair well with each other. Now this guy here is, it's a full frame. I can either, in terms of the modes that I use in Magic Lantern to get me the best quality, is either a 1080p, but it's a square 1080p, which is 1920 by 1280 instead of 1080. So I get an extra 200 pixels horizontally, closer to a 3:2 or 4:5 aspect ratio. And I also like the 2.8K mode on here. In both cases, I am basically within the same resolution ballpark as the Insta360 Go 3. This is one of the must-haves. You need to have this magnetic clamp, although I kind of jimmy rigged. I essentially took one of these, this is from Tilta. It is a 15mm rod base plate from Tilta. They have 95mm and 105mm. So I took a 95mm one, I cut it up as such, right? So it can fit concisely within the camera with customly bolted on the magnetic mount, and to keep this as a low profile thing as possible. So if I do mount the Insta360 Go 3 on here, it gets on there very quickly. I'm not gonna lose it. It's clipped on. In fact, I can't even pull it off. I have to ensure that I disengage one of the locking clamps, then I can pull it off. Other than that, if it's not locked in, if it is locked in, then it's gonna stay on there. And the cool thing about this design is it still gives me access to mount and dismount the lens as such. And so this right here is a really nice profile. It took me 3 or 4 iterations to get this right. Everything from hot glue to different other things. I think there's one more iteration I need to make on this guy, is basically trim out. This is actually kind of sharp. I haven't cut myself yet, so that's why I haven't taken the time, but probably the day I scratch myself or I draw blood is the day I'm gonna trim these edges here. Now, similarly, when it comes to the 5D Mark III, it's the same idea. It doesn't have to be 5D Mark III. That I would say any camera with a viewfinder, any DSLR, a GH5, any camera with a viewfinder. So either rangefinder, viewfinder, right? And so any camera with a viewfinder, if you want to mount it in a similar manner, I would highly recommend get the Tilta base plate. But for this one, I have the 114 millimeter base plate with a 15 millimeter rod attachment. And in this case, I took a monitor mount right here. And then I took a short 15 millimeter rod, tightened it in here, and then I mounted this clamp. And the cool thing about this clamp is that on a lens, or not lens, on a body of this size, I will very likely have bigger lenses, especially because of the way that the grip is designed. And so this allows me to adjust my, if I want to have that second camera or the B cam, I can essentially extend this thing out there so that I can still, if I'm putting a longer lens on here, I'll still be able to get my second angle. So that's one of the things I like about this setup that I've put together. It's a camera to have as part of a kit for whatever it is that you're using. If you currently don't have a camera, I don't know if this is the right thing for you to get. I think this is a great companion camera for anybody who has a camera. If you don't have a camera, get yourself a small M6 Mark II is not a bad choice in terms of it being a good used Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla type of vehicle, whereas this guy right here is probably a classic Acura Legend. Anybody who likes cars, I hope you get my references. Whereas this here is like a Civic Type R. All you folks who enjoyed cars growing up during the 90s, you will, I don't know if that's still that is still a thing where people would soup up like Civics and Corollas and things like that. But yeah, that's how I see these cameras. And that's how this in this situation fits in for me now. And it's actually for that reason I'm considering selling the GH5 that I have and getting a GH5S, because I'll get better image quality. And but then I'll gyro stabilize as opposed to, because I don't use the IBIS much, right? In fact, I don't. After gyro data stabilization, I think is rendered IBIS obsolete almost. Although I've been seeing some of the clips of the S5 Mark II and the S9 with people running with it, with its IBIS and with the extra E-stabilization, but that's on a whole different level. It's newer tech. The GH5 doesn't have that tech. And I don't use Lumix paired lenses with it. I adapt lenses, so I'm not going to get the full benefit of the IBIS as I would if I were using it with a Lumix lens. As you can see, it got a Metabones speed booster on here, and that's essentially a must because all of my lenses are full frame and crop sensor lenses for the EF mount. And so I'm able to essentially use it on here. But if I had the GH5S, the good thing about the GH5S is that in terms of image quality, it is similar, as I understand, with relation to the dynamic range and noise to signal ratio of a full frame camera. If you play your cards right. What I would most likely do is probably sell my GH5, sell my busted GH4, sell my G85, which works fine, but I just don't use it much as of late. All of my event stuff that I'm recording, like seminars and things like that, I'm using 3 Sony ZV-E10s and paired with a GH5. And so, whereas the GH5S actually has a bigger sensor, better low light, and all that good stuff. So it'll actually fit better within that workflow and that kind of work, and pair that with the gyro data on here, because here's the downside of using gyro data with the GH5, and I've done this before. There's a floating sensor in the GH5. Now, if you're not running around with it like this, whereas my style of gyro stabilized footage is I'll put a handle and I'll run, right? And so because of the floating sensor, that sensor will move, right? And it will affect the quality of the image. And so as a result, the gyro data ends up becoming, doesn't work. I need the sensor to be solid. And so that's why the GH5S comes into play. And to be fair, the GH5S is intended for a more hands-on technical approach to filmmaking. I know a lot of people don't like gyro flow, and again, this is what one of my main uses for it. For those people who want to use gimbals, great. I don't like it. It's on the opposite side. I'd rather use digital stabilization, and the gyro data that comes out of this is excellent. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you soon.